Good morning. My name is Molly Wecker, and I'm one of the worship interns this year. Today's scripture comes from Ecclesiastes 1 through 11. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, there is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Will you please pray with me? Lord, thank you for being with us today. We hope that everyone is staying safe. We ask you speak through Jared so we can feel your presence. Thank you for this beautiful day. Amen.
All right, Ecclesiastes. It's a fun one, isn't it? You've read this one? Yeah? Man, it is a joy. My name is Jared Edwards, and I'm the minister of worship and tech. And honestly, Ecclesiastes is kind of like one of my top books in the Bible. It's the 3-week series that we're going to be doing, and so I'll be bringing the message today, and then for the next 2 weeks, you're in good hands with Gonzo, and that's going to be great. So the message that I got today is called The Vanity of Life. Sunshine and rainbows, right? And so I'm going to be kind of breaking down various sections of the first 11 verses in what Molly read. Great job, Molly. Thank you for that. And then the slide 1 that we have, Ecclesiastes or Koheleth. I apologize for the just brashness of that or there. That's a little much, okay? It's not a choice, one or the other. I'm sorry about that. They're the same word. You could say Ecclesiastes or you could say Koheleth. It's derived from the Greek translation of the Hebrew title, Koheleth. It means teacher or preacher. And Koheleth is thought to be a title rather than a person's name. I think we could have assumed that. It indicates someone who gathers or addresses an assembly. So they were big time, okay? We have reason to believe that it was King Solomon, son of King David. There's some scholars that say, parts of it were written from a different perspective than that. We're going to go with King Solomon. I think, at least I am today. How about that? And reading this book over the years growing up, it was easy for me to kind of imagine Solomon writing these words in a little bit of a vacuum, just alone, writing in his room in his castle, just coming up with these deep thoughts. And there may have been some of that, who knows? But what we do know about Solomon is that he was quite the traveler, okay? He had considerable resources, and he moved around. And when he did that, he would no doubt come in contact with other Near Eastern cultures and philosophies, such as those in the Greeks and the Persians. And those of us who know a little bit about philosophy, and when I say a little bit for me, when I say us, I mean, probably some of you. That's what I mean. It was the language of the day. There were a lot of people in those different cultures that came out and even today, their philosophical musings and thoughts have been written down and still affect us today. And so they were no doubt affecting Solomon when he wrote this book. And also knowing that he probably would have written this later, like much later in his life. Okay. And so while Solomon did have a considerable amount of wealth, there was also lots of different kingdoms and empires that were around. And so I wouldn't call Israel at that time like the superpower of the day. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So there was the political situation for the Israelites during this time was less than optimal, okay? And if you know, the Persians actually came in and occupied Israel not very long after Solomon was king. And so there were foundational questions. There was unrest. There was confusion for possibly him and for sure his people. So I imagine with all the uncertainty and probable injustices happening, that foundational questions about life and existence were thick in the air. And honestly, it kind of sounds familiar, right? It's pretty relatable to our day today. I mean, a common word that we're hearing in the media right now around the election is existential, right? I mean, I remember being in high school, the elections were important. This is an important election. And then in college, it kind of felt like this is a very important election. And maybe in my 30s, I think it was, this is the most important election of your life. And now our very existence is just in the balance every day, right? It's a lot, isn't it? Thank you for finding the humor in it, because come on, let's take a step back. Let's moderate all of that, okay? But we want our existence to count for something. It's so easy to get discouraged because sometimes it doesn't always feel like there's a lot of truth to that saying, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It kind of feels like right now it's this weird waving line of justice, and there's just way too many unprecedented times that are mixed in. Am I right? But through all of it, I believe that we really do want our lives to have meaning and purpose. And coming to the tail end of my 40s, I can say that I think a lot. I think a lot about my life and the impact that I'll have on my kids and my grandkids and whoever else I hang out with. And that brings me to verse 4 in that chapter that we read. And you can sum it up by this phrase: generations come and go, but the earth remains forever. It's passages and phrases like this. It can kind of do one or two things, right? It can kind of depress you because, we're just kind of a blip. You can kind of feel like that. Or some of us may feel like, hey, the pressure's off. I can kind of just roll through here and it doesn't really matter. Either one, that's fine. That's you. I think about the amount of humans that have been just alive and then are not just gone. Like a random century, like the 13th century. Think about all the hundreds of millions of people that were alive during the 1200s, okay? So I looked up notable people from the 1200s, and the first one was Marco Polo. I didn't know that was a guy. I thought that was just a game that we play in the pool with your eyes closed. And so there's a dude, and I don't know what his deal was. I didn't dive into it. I don't have time for all of that. Maybe he invented pool games. I'm not sure. We're just assessing from one picture. Number 2, Saint Nick. I mean, that's big. 12th century or 13th century, 1200s. Thank you. Thank you for him. And then the rest of the Wikipedia page of notable people, I'm not sure if they could fit in this room, but they could just certainly, we could fit them in the building. And so that leaves however many hundreds of millions of people that were alive at the time, and we don't know about them, not even a little bit. And that's just crazy to think about. And also, like, bring it to today, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that just because there's a digital record of all of us that we're going to live on in infamy either, right? I have DVDs in my house right now of me when I was young and when I healed fast. And I don't care about those at all. I probably won't dig them up for a really long time, if at all. I'm certainly not going to try to find a DVD player somewhere, right? And so do I really think that someone in 21, 24 is going to look up Jared Edwards 2024 when I don't even care about my own self at 1994, right? So I told you this was going to be hopeful. This is big. But I love this sentence. I'm going to try to say it like I'm going to say it, but I'm reading it, okay? But instead of focusing on the inevitability that time will ultimately erase nearly every trace of most of us, and wallowing in the melancholy that we as individuals are mere dust particles in the vast continuum of time and space, the hopeful part is, and the real part is, that we get the opportunity to remember that our Creator God breathed life into us for a reason. And here we are. Here we are in this present moment. And for those around us, our family and our friends and our neighbors, it's important that we live lives of authenticity and compassion, because our actions really do resonate profoundly in the lives that we touch. I heard a quote in a podcast this past week, and the quote was, "A life well lived is the greatest gift you can give." It's like resonating with me incredibly. A life well lived is the greatest gift you can give. And if you think about it, it's very true. Because if you think about the people in your life that are mentally and physically and emotionally healthy, those are people in your life that you need, you gravitate towards, you can lean on them, okay? They are a gift. Because you compare those people to the people that you know and love that are unhealthy in those ways. Like, you love them, but they're a lot, right? And so I want to be one of those people that live a life that's well lived, because I want to be a gift to those around me. In Ecclesiastes 1:5-7, we'll summarize those verses by saying this: "The sun rises and sets, the wind blows, and rivers flow endlessly." All right, so I love the show Alone. Does anybody know this show, Alone? Okay, we got a couple Alone watchers. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks, Ray. Yeah, that's good. Well, he has to watch it sometimes. Poor guy. So in this show, all right, I'm going to tell you all about it. And you're going to hate the show probably by the time I'm done, because I love it so much. And sometimes when someone loves something a lot and they tell you about it, you end up kind of hating it, but that's fine. So anyway, they take 10 contestants each season, and they take them and they drop them off each in their own separate remote locations, okay? So it's like someplace in the Arctic or Saskatchewan, or where there's tons of nature. They're not going to run into anything civilized, okay, or each other. And they're allowed to bring 10 items from this, huge list from like home or wherever to help them survive. And they have to survive completely off the land. It's not like your 10 items can be like 10 pallets of beans or anything like that, right? So it's things like, bow and arrow, an axe, things like that, a sleeping bag, good stuff that'll help you survive. And the last one, like the one that stays out the longest without calling in, gets the cash prize. And so, yeah, they usually bring axes, knives, sleeping bags, fishing lures, and they have to build their own shelter. And this is so fun to watch, right? Because they usually drop them off in a place where it's kind of like late fall when they get dropped off, and then the weather turns to a horrific winter. I mean, it's not like Texas winter, okay? It's like real winter that can kill you. It would kill me easily in like 3 days. I was going to say 4, but I think 3 would be better. But they all have their own strengths, okay? And it's so interesting to watch them, because some will like use the tarp that they bring, and they'll just lay under that tarp and sleep under that until it gets cold, and then they'll build their shelter. And then some, they'll just get right to it, and they'll just build this log cabin that's massive and huge, and they're spending a lot of I'm getting into the details, sorry, of it all. Okay. But some are really good at trapping and bow hunting, and others get a decent amount of fish. And it's so interesting to watch the elements kind of influence each person differently. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it is terrible TV, because what they do is before I saw a behind the scenes thing, they gather everybody at the camp or whatever, somewhere else, before they dispatch, and they say, here's your 4 cameras, and you have to set them around and record yourself doing things, making the kill or the fish or whatever, so that we can have a TV show. And these people do that. And it's wild, because you'll come back from a commercial and it's 42-year-old Brady from Ontario singing an original song around the campfire about the rabbit that he's eating. And it's awful, because he's not on a singing show. He's on a hunting show. So Brady, no more singing. And then sometimes you get Jody from Alaska, and she's just puking her guts out for 7 minutes. And the camera just rolls on. And I sit there on the couch and I just watch Jody throw up. Well, she's only eaten blueberries and moss for 15 days. What do you expect, right? What's funny, though, is that most of the time, the folks that tap out, because you can, they give them a radio, and you can call and be like, hey, I'm tapping out officially, come get me. Most of the time, it's because they've hit a wall with hunger, right? They've went without food long enough, they've lost 40 pounds or whatever it is, and that's not an exaggeration. And it's having an adverse effect on their health. And but it's so bizarre, because when they make their last video, 8 times or so out of 10, they'll just pontificate a little bit, and they're just like, I accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. I'm a different person now. I really found myself. My kids, I miss my kids are really missing me. I'm like, it's been 10 days, right? It's like, your kids are fine. You just didn't catch enough fish, right? But I love that. It's just a reminder, watching the show, that nature and those environments, they're not thinking about us. The rain clouds aren't thinking about if our riverbanks are full or not. The winds, they don't think about our houses or our roofs. In fact, we can't be anything but humbled when the cycle and strength of nature flex around us. Floods and tornadoes, they've been happening since the beginning, and they'll continue to happen until the earth ceases to be. And I think what that can teach us is that we can't control our world. Life happens to us. And we have to react, and then we have to move on, because guess what? The next thing is going to happen next. But God has given us the strength to endure, to be resilient, to make it through. His constancy and his steadfastness is truly something that we can put our faith in when the storms of life come our way. We can and we will observe the enduring rhythms of life. And just like the seasons provide a time of harvest, sometimes, and sometimes not harvest at all, we can walk through the years knowing that the fun seasons will come and the tough ones will come, and we can use all of it to connect to God and his strength, and use it to connect to the people around us. Because see, the very best part of the show alone is when the last person is out there and they've won, because they don't know it. No one knows how many people have dropped out or how long other people are going. You're just out there. And every once in a while, the team will come in and they'll give medical checks because really they don't want anyone dying on the show because I don't know if it's good or bad for ratings, not sure. But they call in and they're like, hey, we're going to come in and do a medical check. And the winner, they're always scared. They're like, oh God, they're going to take me. I'm way too thin. I don't know. I haven't eaten in a couple days. And they're worried. So they're talking to the camera crew as they're doing, a little bit of the wellness check. And what they do is they surprise the winner with a loved one that kind of sneaks up on them. And in a good way. It's not, they don't turn around with their bow. It's just like, but they're so happy to see the loved one. And you can tell like that connection is worth way more than the prize money. And that's an instance where whatever storms may come, we don't have to go it alone. In fact, I would say it like, please don't go it alone. It's not how we're built. We are built for community. All those contestants, they go through a certain amount of physical pain and discomfort, and that varies with how much food they can harvest. But the emotional well-being of each of those people, it deteriorates as time goes on. The Bible says right up front in Genesis that we're not meant to be alone. The good, the bad, the ugly can all happen. But God has brought you into a community of people where his love and strength can be felt in a tangible and sustaining way. Verses 9 and 10, I summed it up with this phrase, history repeats itself. Nothing is truly new under the sun. I found this paragraph that kind of helps this along, so I'm just going to read this. The phrase, what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. And there is nothing new under the sun. It reflects a profound perspective on the cyclical nature of life and human endeavors. It suggests that human experiences, innovations, and actions are repetitions of past events, merely variations on themes that have existed for centuries. This viewpoint highlights the inevitability of history repeating itself and the persistence of fundamental human nature. Despite technological advancements and cultural shifts, the core of human behavior, challenges, and triumphs remains consistent across generations. This cyclical perception can be both humbling and reassuring, reminding us that while we navigate our unique paths, we are part of a timeless continuum. And I really felt this and got to live this out the past few weeks because many of you stopped me and asked me, hey, what happened to your wrist or your hand? And because I don't really care to make up a better story, and it's not really me to like weave a web of lies. I told the story of how I messed up my hand. I broke it countless times. And because I probably didn't talk to all of you, let me just tell the story one more time. Yeah. So I punched my kitchen counter because I got mad during an argument with one of my teenagers. So that's how that happened, right? This, of course, is one of my least favorite stories that I can tell about myself. I have some really good ones, and I'd love to tell those. They don't fit here for this message, so we're going to move on. Let me just say, to those of you that I talked to the past few weeks and told the story to, I want to thank you so much for not making me feel like a total monster, okay? So thanks. Many of you were like, oh, yeah, I get it. Teenagers, you know? Some of you were like, man, I hate kitchen counters. No, no one said that. But it's been so nice to know that I'm not the first dad who lost his temper and just wanted to punch something. And that's where my wife would say, yeah, but they probably didn't. And she's right. And good for you who controlled yourself. But I think we we can be comforted that all of our reactions to things that happen to us, for better or for worse, are variations of what's come before and what will come after us. The power in that is how we relate to each other. And I think there's been a lot of instances where the church has come across as a judge, right? We judge the larger culture and we draw lines around who's in and who's out. And I don't know if that has worked out for us very well in those instances. Honestly, the church is just not called to be the judge, right? As individuals, we're not called to be the judge. Has anybody read the book, The Shack? Yeah, all right. We have some Shack readers. Or the movie, yeah. Movies, I haven't seen the whole movie, but I looked up this clip that I remembered from the book, and I watched it on YouTube the other day, and so it was very powerful for me. There was a part in there where Mackenzie, he's the protagonist, he's a dad, and he's talking to this character that represents wisdom, okay? So there's a whole, half a book that gets him to this point. And he's emotional, he's upset, he feels slighted in life. And wisdom, since she is typically sits on the judgment seat or the chair, she asks him to judge. She's like, why don't you sit in the chair? And he's like, well, okay, I guess I'll try it. And she asks him, she's like, all right, I need you to judge the murderers and the rapists. And he's like, that's easy, guilty. And then she brings up this apparition of a man, and she goes, well, what about the man who abuses his wife or takes out his frustration on his kids? And you could see like the man moves over and there's this, this little boy that's like cowering beneath like his standing father. And he's like, yeah, I think guilty, sure. And then she says, wisdom points to the boy in the little movie that's going on, and she's like, what about the boy? Will you judge him? And Mackenzie's like, no, why would I do that? And she was like, well, due to earlier conversations, you already have, because that's your dad. And then she doubles down and she brings up apparitions of his daughter and his son. And she's like, all right, you're the judge. You need to send one of your kids to heaven and one of your kids to hell. And he's like, what? I don't understand. And she's like, she brings up a couple things that they're doing, just like teen stuff that he doesn't know about, like sneaking out and stuff like that. And she's like, so you need to figure out who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. And he's like, I can't do that. And he gets up off the chair and he walks down and he's like, I'll go, just send me. I'll go in their place. And wisdom responds with, no, that's the heart of God. As we turn the page on the next chapter of Marion Methodist, we need to continue to welcome the community to a place where they know that what they're going through and the struggles that they have aren't unique to them. That there is solidarity here in this place, that we know what it's like to be human, and that what we do have is a connection to grace and love and kindness and hope, and all of that is because of Jesus. That we aren't here to judge or compare or embody some sort of hierarchy, but to come alongside of people, to lift them up, because there is nothing new under the sun. Our message to those in need needs to be, I've been where you are, even if it's not exactly what you're going through or what happened to you or the choices that you made, but I see you and you belong here because we all belong here, because his grace is amazing and his kindness is everlasting and he's seen it all and he's forgiven it all, so we can be free and we can be free together, right? The last verse, 111. Even thinking about the task of going out into the community, sometimes it feels like our efforts seem insignificant in the grand scheme. The author of Ecclesiastes, he ends this particular section with a statement that both former and future generations will eventually not be remembered. Kind of restates it. But he states it's like so matter-of-factly, right? I'm not sure if it's a lament or if it's not. It could very well be a sad note where there is some despair in the mix, because in the context of the verses before and after it, it does feel like it's not his favorite thing that he's ever written down. But perhaps the whole thing, there's more of like a it is what it is kind of tone to it. But it's hard for us to catch it because of our American lenses. We are kind of idealists. We are kind of exceptionalists sometimes. And it's reflected in our movies, of course. For decades, our movies have had like hero stories where a single individual gets fed up with something and they go off and they beat up or shoot up or whatever, scads of enemies, and the ultimate good is achieved because the actions of this one lone person who beat the odds because of their skill and their grit. I love those movies. But in reality, I know with a fair amount of certainty that I would not be able to eliminate an entire warehouse of armed enemies, right? And if you think you can, either thank you for your service or also enjoy your delusions. That's nice. Honestly, that assessment of my own capacity, it can be seen in the day in and day out of everyday life for all of us. Sometimes it feels like we just don't have enough time in the day to get everything done. I feel like that. And I handle like nothing compared to what my wife handles administratively. So what I want to do, I guess I want to validate you. Those of you that feel like you're on the hamster wheel and ask the question like, what is this for? Whether it's spreadsheets or the budget or kids' activities or loads of laundry and it just keeps coming at you and you feel like it's one step forward and two steps back. Take a breath and take heart, because you're not the first and you're not the last. This is life on planet Earth and we're human. Not every sunset is fantastic. Not every dinner is romantic. Not every movie night with the kids is fun. I just like to have one fun movie night, honestly. I love you guys. But we can be thankful that God is in it. The trick is remembering that fact. So I guess in conclusion, we want to ask the question, what is our ultimate purpose? Looking at the whole of this first chapter in Ecclesiastes, I would say first is to seek to understand. Don't just keep walking forward with blinders on. Seek to gain perspective and soak up the wisdom from that moment. We operate primarily from the on-the-ground point of view, but the truth is we have access to God's point of view, but we have to seek it. Lately, I can't stand what all comes with flying. Because it feels like you're always like delayed or flights canceled or whatever it is, computer systems down. It can be a terrible time. But what I do love is when you first take off and you look down and the road that you were just driving on, highway, whatever it is, and there's all the cars on there that looks like toy cars and the houses all look like toy houses. That's so fun to me. But it's God's perspective too. Because when we're driving on the highway, we know what that looks like. We're driving, we're focusing usually. We got the seatbelt on, we got the radio to a certain level, whatever it is. We got to concentrate. There's hills, there's valleys. But from God's point of view, if just a little different perspective, the road doesn't look quite so long. And the hills and the valleys, they all level out. Because we have a God that can see all of time and space and how our efforts and our strivings all play out. And he sees all of that through love. And so what we call that situation is the gospel. So we have the opportunity to live this cyclical, sometimes mundane, often wondrous life and to live it saturated with grace and mercy and kindness and a strength from a God who loves us and desires our communion. Since the beginning of the Bible, we've been invited to be co-creators with God. We're image bearers in that way, every single one of us. And we, here in this room, aren't the sum of that group. There are more in our community that need to be in here with us. There are more that are missing it and looking for it. And it's our purpose to invite them in so that they can find Jesus. We need to be mirroring him with how we speak, the stories that we tell, and how we tell them. So I invite us to move through this series and explore it with curiosity. Perhaps those of us who are putting too much pressure on ourselves to get it right, maybe you can, in the phrase, let go and let God. And maybe those who are finding everything a bit dull or meaningless, the colors are muted in the life that you're living right now. I pray that through this series you'll find a spark that God gives. Because God is here and he's calling us to be a partner in all of it. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the books of the Bible with so much variety, with songs that we can sing, with bits of wisdom, with stories that are fantastic. Books like this that make us think, make us scratch our head a little bit. God, I just pray that the dialogue around this series as we move through small groups or whoever we talk about it with, God, that there would be a true introspection as we answer questions of each other. And God, I just pray that you would just move through us as individuals and as a church to truly fulfill our purpose in letting this world know that you love us, that you love them, as we bring the kingdom of heaven to the kingdom of earth. For that is our job, and we say yes to it. And in your name we pray. Amen.